All right, class, this is worksheet 2.3 from Edpuzzle 2.3. We're classifying, we're taking a look at models as to how we can represent elements and compounds and mixtures. So take a look up at the top here. So I got to show you that up here we're talking about an element. We can talk about an element that looks like that. Notice it's a singular thing. You could also see an element that looks like there's two of the same, but they're connected. Now, because these two dots are the same and they're connected, it's a molecule, but it's a molecule of an element, and that's called a diatomic molecule or a diatomic element. So what about compound? Compound would look similar in that you have a dot and then you have an open dot. And because these two are different, that makes this a compound. So for a compound, you have to have more than one dot and you have to have more than one kind of dot. You can take a look down here. You can see this would be an excellent example of a compound. So it doesn't just have to be two. It can be, 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 6, like we see down here. So then we talk about mixtures of elements. So if we take a look at number 2, notice that in box number 2 that we have the darkened ones and we have the outlined ones. And because they both represent different elements, that's what the mixture is then. So a physical combination. And we take a look at a mixture of compounds. Again, when we see something like, and let me scroll down here to number 4, box number 4, you can see that this is a good example because we have a compound that looks like this and a compound that looks like that. And because they're two different compounds, that's what the mixture is. And the last one is a mixture of elements and compounds. So you have a compound and an element. Remember what I said before, if you have two that are the same connected, that's still just an element and not a compound. So here I have compounds, as you see with this, and I have elements that you see like this. So this would be a good example of a mixture of elements and compounds. Okay, so we know it's a compound when it's different types of circles that connect with each other. They must be touching. Okay, you can still have an element with, like you see here, you still have an element where you have two things touching, but they have to be the same thing that's touching. Okay, I'm not going to do this whole worksheet for you. I want you to see if you can figure out as we continue on here from 7 through 15, if you can get all of those. Now I just want to say something about drawing a particle diagram for each of the following below. Then give an example for each. So I'm not going to do this whole thing for you, but I do want to show you the first two because I think you can get the rest of those then. Given a little bit of information. So pure diatomic element is just what we talked about before. It's touching, it's the same particle, but there's more than one of them. You could also have something that looks like this, and either one of these would be examples of a pure diatomic, di meaning two, a two-atom molecule of an element. Okay, that's what we're talking about. You guys have heard of O2 before. That's the gas that we breathe. That if we don't have that, then we can't live. We never talk about oxygen gas with just one atom. It's always two atoms of oxygen together, which is why we call it O2. Okay, that's for an element. But a pure diatomic compound, then of course you know that we have to have one open, one closed, or we have to have different elements that are touching each other. Okay, it doesn't matter what order they come in, like this. It means the same thing. How about carbon monoxide? You ever heard of carbon monoxide? That's one carbon, one oxygen. Or even more familiar is sodium chloride or table salt. One sodium, one chlorine. Those are good examples of pure diatomic, di meaning two, atomic meaning atoms, compounds. So they have two different elements in them and only two. Okay, I'm sure you guys can use the examples from above, from 1 through 15 boxes on the first page to see if you can figure out the mixtures of two elements, mixtures of an element and a compound, and give examples for those. And also describe number 1 here in terms of composition, the type of atoms, and what the difference between the monatomic, mono meaning one atom element that looks like this, and a diatomic element that looks like this, and a diatomic compound that looks like this, but they're both touching. There, like that. That's touching. Okay, good luck. I hope you do well. Let me know if you have questions.